Alright guys, good morning from the family room today. And we have Hayes, Zeus, who probably won't stay again, but at least maybe, nobody commented, I didn't know if that was interesting for you to have them in the video or not. But anyways, I'm going to go ahead and read today's chapter. And today is chapter 16, Preparation. Alec never knew how he'd get through the rest of that day at school. All he could think of was what a week from today he'd be racing the Black against Cyclone and Sun Raider. Somehow he still couldn't believe that all this was happening to him, Alec Ramsey. That night, after dinner, he walked into the living room where his dad was reading. He sat down in a chair and nervously turned the pages of a magazine. His father looked up from the paper. "Received a letter from Mother today, Alec. She's getting a big kick out of Chicago and seeing your aunt again. She says if everything's okay here, she'll stay 3 weeks. That all right with you?" "Sure, Dad," Alec smiled. "You're a good cook." His dad laughed. "Exams at school will be starting soon now, won't they, son?" "Monday." His father lit his pipe and then picked up the paper again. He turned to the sports section. "Ready for him?" he asked. "Guess so." The room became silent. Alec turned more pages of his magazine and then looked up at his father, whose face was hidden behind the spread newspaper. Thick smoke curled upward toward the ceiling. Alec cleared his throat and was just about to speak when his dad's voice broke the silence. "All anybody can read in the sports section these days is about that horse race out in Chicago next Friday. Wonder who the devil this mystery horse is that Jim Neville's got in that race." Alec's pulse raced. "Dad?" "Yes, son." "Dad, that's what I want to talk to you about. You see..." His father once again let the paper fall in his lap and looked at him. Alec couldn't keep his voice from faltering. The mystery horse, he stammered, "is the Black." His father looked at his son in amazement. The room was still. "You mean, Alec, that the Black is the horse everyone's been talking about? He's the mystery horse?" "That's right, Dad." Alec rose from his chair and went to the window. He drew the curtain to the side and then let it fall again. "But who's going to ride him in a race like that?" Mr. Ramsey asked. Alec tried to swallow, but nothing seemed to go down. "I am," he answered softly. The doorbell rang. "I'll answer it, Dad," Alec said with relief. He knew it would be Henry answering his signal from the window. Henry came in and removed his old brown fedora. He gave Alec a knowing glance. "Evening, Mr. Ramsey," he said matter-of-factly. "Hello, Henry," Alec's father answered. "Glad you're here. You must be in on this, too. Now tell me what the devil's been going on between you and the Black. I had a hunch something was up, but I never dreamed it was anything as stupendous as this." "It's quite a long story," Henry said. Then, for the next half hour, he told about the training of the Black and Alec's midnight rides at Belmont. Alec watched his father as he listened intently to Henry. How would he take it? He loved horses himself, but would he let him ride? It was a good thing Mom wasn't here. When Henry finished, his father turned to him. "Leave us alone for a few minutes, will you, Alec, please?" Alec nodded and climbed the stairs to his room. Henry looked at Mr. Ramsey. "You've got to let him ride in the race," he said. "His heart and soul are wrapped up in it. Alec isn't the same boy you sent to India last summer. You know that as well as I do, but he's a better man for it." "But Henry, it's such a dangerous race for him to go into, and on that wild horse." "Not any more dangerous than what he's faced many times since that boat went down in the ocean. I've grown to know your boy pretty well within the last few months, and I can honestly say that he's different from any of us. He's found something that we never will, because we'll never go through the experiences that he had to." Henry paused a few moments. "Besides," he continued, "I'd be mighty proud to have a boy that could ride that Black Stallion, something I'm certain no one else in the world can do." Mr. Ramsey rose and walked across the room. He didn't say anything for a few minutes. Then he walked toward the stairs. "Okay, Henry," he said, "I'll tell Alec he can ride." Jim Neville telephoned Henry the next day to tell him that everything was all set for the Black. The freight charges to Chicago for the three horses would be taken care of from the proceeds of the race, as would all the rest of the charges to and from the track. Cyclone and Sunraider were leaving Monday or Tuesday so they could get in a couple of workouts before the race. Henry couldn't tell him when the Black would be ready to leave. He had to ask Alec first. Whatever you do, Jim said, don't run him over at Belmont anymore. I'm going to try to keep the mystery horse's identity a secret, because if it ever got out, you'd be swarmed with reporters and it would only make the last few days a lot more hectic. The Black is going to have enough excitement as it is. Jim paused. You're sure he's in good condition, Henry? He asked. Boy, I've gone out on a limb with him. Got to wondering whether I'd been dreaming that night. That's why I keep looking at the stopwatch in my desk drawer. It's the only thing that restores my confidence. Henry laughed. Sure, he said, he's in tip-top shape. A few minutes after he hung up, Alec came into the barn. Jim just called, Henry said. Everything's all set for shipping the Black and stabling him out there. Not going to be expensive at all. Henry looked out at the field at the stallion. When can we shove off, Alec? Cyclone and Sunraider are leaving tomorrow at the latest. That means they'll have a few days to get accustomed to the track. Just got through talking with Dad again, answered Alec. He's letting me ride under one condition, that I stay and finish my exams. How long is that? I start them tomorrow and I have my last one Thursday morning. Phew, and the race is Saturday, said Henry. Yes, but Dad called the station and found out there's a train that leaves Thursday afternoon that'll get us in Chicago early Friday morning. It's the only fair thing to do, Henry, and he's been swell about the whole thing. You're right, son, and that isn't so bad. Gets us there a day ahead of time. Maybe it's just as well we're not getting there too early, seeing the Black we're racing. Alec laid down his pen. There, his last exam was over. He blotted his paper carefully and looked up at the clock. Almost noon. He'd have to hurry if they were to make the 3 o'clock train. He handed his paper to the teacher and walked out of the room. In the hall, he met Whiff and Bill. How was it? Bill asked. Not so bad, Alec replied, going right ahead. They fell into step with him. What's the hurry? Whiff asked. I have to get home, some work to do, Alec answered. There was going to be plenty of work before they got the Black on the train. How you coming with the Black? Whiff asked. Okay, why don't you guys come around anymore? No thanks, Whiff answered. Not any more of that horse for me. He's too dangerous. Me either, agreed Bill. Talking about horses, you gonna listen to the big race day after tomorrow? Alec shrugged his shoulders. Should be a corker, Bill went on. Wonder who the mystery horse is gonna turn out to be. Probably some ham and egger, chirped up Whiff. Cyclone will walk away with it. Not with Sunraider in the race, Bill said. Who do you think's gonna win, Alec? Alec smiled. Well, the only one you fellas leave out is the mystery horse, so I guess I'll take him. You're stuck, Bill laughed. We'll see, grinned Alec. He turned out to go out the door. So long, fellas, he said. So long. When he reached home, he found his dad waiting for him. They didn't talk about their race while eating lunch. They went over to the barn. Alec wasn't nervous. Instead, he was calm and eager to match the Black's speed against Cyclone and Sunraider. In the front of the barn, Alec saw Henry and Jim Neville. Both of them were going to Chicago with Alec and the Black. Then there was Joe Russo and another man with a camera. Just to the side of them stood a large horse van. Alec and his father greeted the small group. Everything all set, Alec? Henry asked. I suppose you took that exam in stride today, Jim Neville kidded. Hope so, Alec answered, but his thoughts were turning forward. He nodded toward the van. Guess we're going to the train in style, huh, Henry? You bet, Henry said, and we're going out to Chicago in style too. Jim tells us we can have our own private car waiting at the station. No, Alex exclaimed. Yep, isn't that so, Jim? Sure, Jim replied. Cyclone and Sunraider got to Chicago in special cars. There's no reason why the Black shouldn't. Besides, there are a lot of people coming from far and wide to see these 3 horses, so they should have to be at their best. Swell, Alex said. Look what Jim gave us, Henry said. He held out a black heavy horse blanket with a white border around it, with the letters in the middle spelling the Black. Gee, Jim, that's swell of you, Alex said. Can't let him have anything on the Black, Jim smiled. The stallion whinnied when Alec entered the barn. Alec took a soft cloth and wiped over his large body. Well, fella, he said, we're off to the races. Henry tossed him the new blanket and Alec snapped it around the stallion. There, he said proudly, that'll keep you nice and warm. Sure makes him look like the real stuff, Henry said. He is the real stuff. Alec stroked the stallion's neck. Then he let him out of the barn. The black reared when he saw the small crowd. He lifted his legs high and stepped gingerly in the circle. Let us take a few pictures for the paper, will you, Alec? Joe Russo asked. Sure, Alec said. Come on, Henry, you get in it too. 10 minutes passed while the photographer snapped pictures. Even Alec's father got into them. Hope you'll be able to use these photos, Alec smiled, after Saturday. The black reared again and the boy started to lead him up into the truck. He neighed loudly and his head turned toward the barn. His ears pricked forward and his eyes shifted from Alec to the barn. What's the matter, fella? Alec asked. I know, Henry said. Every time we've put him into the truck, he had Napoleon with him. Now he's wondering where he is. You're right, Alec said, but we have to get him in anyway. Come on, Black. But the stallion reared again, and when he came down, he pushed his head into Alec's chest, shoving him back toward the barn. Napoleon isn't in there, fella, Alec said. He's working with Tony. But the black only pushed harder. 15 minutes later, Alec was still trying to get him in the van. I'm afraid it's no use, he said. When he gets his mind set on something, nobody's going to change it. Jim Neville glanced at his watch. Getting late, he warned. If we don't start in a few minutes, we'll never make the train. There isn't another till tomorrow. Alec, Black, Alec pleaded. Come on. But the stallion only pranced around him, his nostrils quivering, his eyes looking for Napoleon. Suddenly his ears pricked forward. From far down the street came a familiar voice. Apples, carrots, string beans, potatoes, cabbages, sweet peas. It was Tony and Napoleon, Alec exclaimed. They're on our street. I'll get 'em, yelled Henry as he made a dash for the gate. A few minutes later, Napoleon lopped down the street at his fastest trot. Tony and Henry sat in the seat of the wagon, gripping the sides desperately as Napoleon dashed into the driveway. The black neighed loudly, his head turned toward them. Napoleon's old legs made the gravel fly. He rushed to the black and shoved his nose up at him. Tony and Henry jumped off the seat. Mio Dio, exclaimed Tony. What's the matter with him? Henry told Tony how they had taken Napoleon with them when they trained the black at Belmont, and now how the black was going to run in the big match in Chicago. And now Tony, Henry finished. We can't get him in the van because we're not taking Napoleon. Jim Neville spoke up. Tony, he said, would it be all right with you if we took Napoleon with us to the race? Alec began to feel more hopeful. Do you think we could, Jim, he asked. Sure, if Tony lets us. There's plenty of room on the train, and we're sure to find a stable for him out there. What do you say, Tony? We'll have him back to you by Sunday night, or Monday at the latest, and to make everything square, we'll pay you for Napoleon's time. Tony looked at Napoleon standing with his head beside the black. He was silent for a moment, then his face creased into a grin. Sure, he said. Why not? But no money. Thanks, please. He's been a good horse for 15 years, and he's going to have the vacation. Attaboy, Tony, Alec said. It's going to mean a lot to the black, and to us. You betcha, Tony said proudly as he put a caressing hand on Napoleon's neck. And now, said Jim, let's get going. Henry led Napoleon up into the truck, and Alec followed with the black. He was docile now as he had been difficult before. A few minutes later, they rolled down the driveway. Alec sat between Henry and Jim. They waved to the small group standing beside the barn. Good luck, yelled Joe Russo. Be careful, son, his father called, and put everything you've got into it. Take good care of my Napoleon, Tony shouted. And they went through the gate. We're off, said Henry. And the next chapter is Chicago. So we will get to that tomorrow. Say bye, Hayes. Hayes is an excellent listener.